You have Patrick Findaro here, co-founder at Vetted Biz. Excited to have on Lisa Mary, who's the president of Junk King. Lisa, thanks for joining today.
Happy to join. Excited to talk to you.
So tell me a little bit how you got into the franchise space, and in particular with junk removal.
Sure. So as many people in franchising will tell you, I got here by accident. So I was in college at Penn State, and I was studying to be a math major because my father did not want me to be a teacher because teachers make about $1 a day. So I was on a math track and I fell in love with teaching. So eventually I did become a teacher, but because my dad, of course, was right and I only made $1 a day, I had to also be tutoring on the side. The tutoring company that I went and worked for is a company called Huntington Learning Center, which is actually a very large and well-known franchise company. So little did I know, I was tutoring at a franchise site. About a year and a half after tutoring there, they approached me about being a center director. And I made that decision to say, do I leave the classroom or, do I go on this business track of education? And that's kind of where, that first foot in led. And believe it or not, that was almost 30 years ago, as scary as that sounds.
So this center, was it owned by a franchisee or was it a corporate location?
It was a corporately owned location. So I spent a year or two there, then became one of their regional directors. And then they made the transition to say, we need you to go and work with our franchise owners because you're doing so well running the business. And that's what we want as franchise business consultants, are people who have run a unit well so that you can go out and train all of our franchise owners. So I became a franchise business consultant, or FBC as they call them, eventually the VP of Ops, and then ultimately became the COO at Huntington Learning Center, running every department except for finance and IT. Those were two that I would, prefer to stay out of. I was with them for 16 years, so spent a good bit of my career.
That's like kind of an accelerated career trajectory. Like you start out tutoring and then you get into C-suite in 16 years.
It's amazing, right? And who would have ever thought? When I eventually left Huntington after having been there for 16 years, I knew I wanted to stay in the franchising space because just like so many others, Patrick, you just fall in love with the business model, how it can take someone that truly has the entrepreneurial spirit and wants to be in business for themselves. But as we say in franchising, in business for yourself, but not by yourself. We're going to offer you a system and training and all this support so that you can really be successful in what's a very difficult process of trying to be your own boss and start your own company. I'm sure you know from your JP Morgan days how many individual businesses fail every single year who try to start on their own. So I stayed in franchising, and I actually ended up with a company called Coverall Health-Based Cleaning. They're more B2B. They do a lot of healthcare and schools and daycares, that type of thing. Was with them for about 7 years. And then, interestingly enough, one of the CEOs that eventually went into Huntington, heard about me after being there for 16 years. And when she went to a company called School of Rock, they needed somebody that was strong in operations. So she came and took me out of the cleaning industry and brought me back to kids, right? Brought me back into tutoring, but it was education, music education, as opposed to reading, math, and science. And I will tell you, of all my jobs in franchising, that was by far the coolest. Like, we got to go to all the great venues and we got to go to all the great massive shows. And the kids are just absolutely amazing. While I was there for about 2 years. And then Huntington actually came back to me. They were going through a generational transition because they are a founder-run organization still to this day. So I went back to them for a 2-year contract as COO and helped them build a management team. And when I was done there, which was in February of 2019, I was like, I'm going to take some time off. I'm going to travel, do this, that, and the other thing. And that summer I was contacted by a recruiter who said, I have this perfect position for you, but it's in junk hauling. I was like, no way. I'm not going to do junk hauling. And I was living in Florida at the time. And then she tells me it's in San Francisco. And I'm like, I'm not moving all the way across the country. She convinced me to do the interview. And one thing you'll learn about our founder, Mike Andriaki, is he can sell ice to an Eskimo. I was with him for probably 45 minutes and I knew, I'm going to up my life and off I go to San Francisco to be part of this like amazing junk hauling company. So it's been kind of an interesting zigzaggedy transition through all my different positions. in franchising, but it's an industry I don't think I would ever leave.
How would you say, like, is there like a difference in terms of like corporate culture across the businesses like Coverall, Junking versus like Huntington Learning Center and School of Rock, where people I imagine get fulfillment not from, the end product of teaching kids or, on the education side? Being
an educator at heart myself, I always look for that, how are we helping the world? How are we helping the community? And what we found at Coverall was we were very specific with our franchise owners that they needed to use environmentally sound and safe products, as well as ones that were truly disinfectants for any medical or childcare facility. And little did I know that a few years after I left there, we were going to end up in a worldwide pandemic where their skill set was not just needed, but required, in so many places. So, you can always find the good in something. And when you look at junk hauling and say, how do you go from educating our youth to hauling junk? One of the things that Junking prides itself on is our ability to recycle and to donate. There's a very large philanthropic side to what we do here at the organization. So it's more than just about, keeping the earth clean and helping all the customers like we do, but it is also how are we giving back to the communities, and our franchise owners just absolutely thrive on that. And
you've added the recycling logo, and I can see behind you in the Junking. So, you're living by it. It's there.
Oh, absolutely. As much as we're red, we're green, and we're always going to be that way. And the founder, having been born and raised in the Bay Area, certainly California claims that it leads the way on all things protecting the earth and recycling. So it's always been a big part of his DNA makeup, and he brought it right into the organization. And quite frankly, not only is society, our customers, very excited about that part, but also businesses these days are really looking for a partner when that they hear you're so eco-friendly and so focused on caring for the environment. It does really help us oftentimes get chosen over just a price or a who kind of relationship. So it's definitely benefited us without a doubt.
And do you see, like, we've studied thousands of businesses, margin, like what I've noticed over the last couple of years is like the unsexy businesses, the more complex businesses. So more complex, like healthcare, home care services, unsexy junk removal, they make more money than like a smoothie or fitness or coffee shop.
Sure. Well,
Have you seen that being across these different industries?
So I think, Patrick, from talking to tens of thousands, if, not 100 at this point, thousand, every franchise business has the ability to make money. Who actually makes money in that industry, varies from individual franchise owner to individual franchise owner. What I can tell you about Junking and the junk hauling business is that we have a relatively simple business model. Other than your warehouse and your truck payments and insurance, you have dump costs, employee fees, and a little bit of gas in that as well. So it keeps the P&L relatively simple, that as we're growing and scaling, if we can help teach our franchise owners how to run tight logistics, so you don't have a lot of windshield time between the appointments, and you get the guys trained well so that they're in and out of the houses quickly, but yet sweeping up afterwards. So we leave them with that super smile that, gives us an 89 NPS score, which we're so proud about.
That's very high for that type of consumer product.
It's something that the franchise owners can absolutely have a strong P&L. Just like any other industry, our expenses are going up right now incredibly. So that causes price increases, but ultimately those margins can be healthy. Yes.
About how much time does it take a franchisee to open up from the time they sign the franchise agreement, pay the franchise fee? When are they starting with their first crew?
So our average right now is 6 weeks. We always have trucks ready to go, which is exciting. Okay. And because the brick and mortar requirement for us is just a very basic, 2,000 square foot multi-purpose warehouse type facility. Okay. It's light industrial oftentimes. And again, doesn't need a big build out like a restaurant or a learning center would need. They basically sign a lease and can start operating the very next day. So it's usually, I would say, to find that location, you're in a 4 to 6 week time period. But if they've started looking before, we've even, opened units faster than that.
And what's the headcount look like when that first year? Or is it W-2 employees, contractors? What's it look like?
Definitely W-2 employees, because you have to carry insurance on them when they're going into the homes, which is, our goal is to make it as easy as possible for the consumer. Yeah. You start with 2 guys on a truck and you're running 6 days a week. So you figure even with 1 truck, if you yourself don't want to be on the truck, you probably have 3 or 4 employees so that you're covering 6 days and not running into overtime or any problems like that. And then if you are doing your advertising and out in the community, you can get to a second and a third truck relatively quickly within that first year. And we estimate 3 heads for every truck, one of which has to be a driver and the other 2 can be basic labor.
Okay. So you're saying, 4 or 5 years into the business, you could have 4 or 5 trucks. You have almost 15 employees. Yeah.
If you read our operating manual, our goal for you as a franchise owner is to add at least 1 truck a year. So if you start the first year with 2, then by the time you get to year 2, you're adding 3, then 4, then 5. So you would be by year 4 or 5, like a 5 to 6 truck operation. And you'd want to have 2 to 3 employees for every one of those trucks. And at that point, Patrick, you could even be open 7 days. You could be open Sunday at that point as well. In that beginning year to 18 months, we want to keep you on 6 days so that, again, logistically and for a P&L purpose, we want to try and get you to that break-even point as quickly as possible.
And what's kind of the ideal profile of franchisees? Are there any type of personality traits or experience that you really look for?
So when I think about, the ideal franchisee, you would love for them to have at least a bit of business acumen, right? So that they can understand a P&L and understand how to make good business decisions. You want someone who is excited about being part of their local community, because again, that partnership with some of the places we donate, whether it be Habitat for Humanity or a women's shelter or a veteran shelter, there are a lot of opportunities in the community. But I think the other thing is I'd like to find people who believe they're a good manager of men or of crews. This offers our franchise owners a lot of opportunity to really help mentor and develop what might just be a common laborer who has worked in, maybe lawn care or moving or any of these others, that their goal is to hopefully offer them a career path that they could become a lead driver and then maybe a general manager and that type of thing.
Very cool. Yeah. I think there's such a potential where if it's a fast growing company, like you're saying, where the franchisee is going from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trucks, like there is going to be potential for his employees to grow within the company.
Absolutely.
So if a franchisee is not into that, then those 7 employees are probably going to leave, and it's not going to be that virtuous cycle.
Yeah. We have a very good, what you would call like a sticky rate with our employees. Once we get them in and working, it is a hard job. Like you're going to lift heavy things and you're going to go into some clean, sparkling places and you're going to go into some, not so clean places. Because again, junk hauling's not always all rainbow and sunshine. But it is different every day. It's fun. And the things you come across that, you could keep, I tell you, every one of our crews, I swear, ends up refurnishing their entire house every other year because they find a cold dresser, or they find this amazing, entertainment system or bookshelf or whatever the case may be. So it's always
nice
fun to see what you can find
for the employees and franchisees.
It is, definitely. It's kind of like a treasure hunt every single day.
And how are you guys dividing and conquering on the franchisor side? You mentioned operation manual, supporting with site selection. Are you also doing the lead generation and marketing, or is that more handled by the franchisee?
Sure. So we have our franchise business consultants, like just about any franchise organization does. But then we also have support on the marketing side, as well as technology, and even, going into finance. Not only are the teams available to our franchise owners, but we're always doing manuals and videos, and we do a lot of communication with our organization. So we have, a monthly system-wide call. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out that every department updates. We have ongoing, email communication as most brands do. But I think, again, when you think about what makes us somewhat unique is that we're very good at sharing best practices. So as franchise owners come across something in their own market, whether it be a new partnership with a potential donation center or a new way to hire guys or some things they'd like to see in training, we're very good at cross-pollinating. And as you know, franchise owners love to hear from other franchise owners what's working well in their market.
I think that's a huge, oftentimes talking to franchisees, it's the number one value add. So if you're part of a system with franchisees across the country and the franchisor is helping facilitate that conversation, those best practices, that could be like the number one benefit of
Absolutely.
a franchisee.
And welcoming it with open arms. Not all franchisors do that. And our recent acquisition with Neighborly, which is the global leader in home services, now gives our franchise owners access to 19 other brands that are also in home services. So there's so many similarities where they're now part of a whole community in their market of home service franchise owners. That's a very exciting idea for our franchisees.
Yeah. And I've met a lot of your colleagues now at Neighborly, as I mentioned before we hit record, and people seem to check their ego at the door and everyone's on the same page, very collaborative. So I can imagine that will extend well for all the franchisees.
Definitely. And again, us being new since November 1st, we're only 5 months in, and not only have they been nothing but welcoming, but we've actually found not only will we be a help in the consumer world where our goal is to really offer all the services to a homeowner as a kind of a one-stop shop, but we're finding that Junking also has the ability to support the other brands. So if you have someone that's going in like Rainbow Restoration and they have to do some work in a house, then we can swing by and take care of the hauling needs so they can get their crews off to the next location, helping the next customer. So I think we're going to find that cross-pollination at least across, 60-75% of the brands, which again helps us even accelerate our growth even more.
Well, the customer acquisition, it's always easier when you have a referral, a warm lead that you don't have to pay for, or maybe you pay very little to the other franchisee of that brand, but you're not having to sell them and qualify the lead and everything.
Right. So for the franchise owner, there's an absolute benefit. And hopefully if each one of the brands is being held accountable, then ultimately the consumer benefits as well.
Tell me a little bit, how do you guys get such a high net promoter score?
So like I said, we all compete on price and timing. So, they love the fact that a customer is just so excited when they know we can come same day or next day. And honestly, when you look at 75% of our business is complete within 48 hours. So this is, I made the decision to get rid of something and I'm going to do it now. So timing is a big piece of that. But then I think the other thing is we really spend a lot of time training both the franchise owners and their crews on great customer service, how to be welcoming and how to, talk confidently. And then not only do a good job making sure you're not nicking up a door or a wall when you're removing anything, but we take another step and even sweep up after we're done, whether it's a garage or a basement or an attic. And those little things when it comes to customer service, as you can imagine in any brand, allow the customer to say, God, not only do I feel relief because all that clutter or garbage is gone, but the guys were amazing and, my place looks so much better. I'll tell you, Patrick, I'm one of those presidents who I read our reviews every single day. I wake up in the morning and instead of reading the newspaper and knowing what's going on in the world, I'm reading Junking reviews.
And how many reviews are we talking about?
Oh, it's probably about, we do 800 to 1,500 jobs a day. So you figure at least half of those are submitting reviews.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And it's a quick, cursory, I'm flowing down through, making sure we don't have any unhappy customers. But I think the word that surprised me coming into this industry was how many customers talk about the gentleman who came to help them. That's an amazing descriptor. And it says we're doing something right on the training side. Because if you think about how, fragmented of a market junk hauling is, you could have a guy show up, what we call chuck in a truck in a tank top, wife beater looking thing. And would you even let them in your house? Whereas we come uniformed in a clean and big red shiny truck, and then hopefully have the right conversation that leads us to be able to complete the job and make that customer happy. So we're very proud of that NPS score.
And who are you going to? So there's Chuck in the truck. What the bid process like? Tell me a little bit about the go-to-market? Like, I know you fulfill the service within 48 hours, but like, how long is the sales process? Like, who else is bidding for this job?
I would say the majority of our business, probably a good 75%, comes through Google, right? Whether it's a, paper PPC campaign, a Google guarantee campaign, some of the organic. We use the basic social media platforms that can now do some advertising. And then there are a few aggregators like Angie's List and Home Advisor, those kind of things. So oftentimes when we're bidding against what we call chuck in a truck, they're going to underbid us every time. But the question is, how safe do you feel with them coming into the house, or, their professionalism? So we really do sell on professionalizing what could be, kind of a ragged business at times. Ultimately, when you look at what the consumer is looking for, they're happy to know if we're going to come into the house that we're insured, that we do training, that, we're intent on hiring the best laborers that we can find. And that's important to a lot of consumers.
And what areas of the country are you most excited to expand in?
So we are not currently in New Jersey. And we just went into New York City, which I think is going to be interesting, just to get the big red truck in there, as well as figuring out how to go up and down all those, elevators and whatnot in the city. That'll be fun. We're in most major markets today, which is exciting, and strong presence in California because that's where we were founded, which isn't true for a lot of franchise companies. But really the only big market we're not in is that New Jersey, New York metro area.
And about how much does it cost to open up a Junk King? Say if someone wanted to open up in New Jersey.
Sure. In our FDD, our costs range from $80,000 to $125,000 to open. And basically what that includes is the franchise fee itself, which we charge per head. So you buy population, so you have a protected territory. And then it's the expense of buying a truck, which you don't pay for cash. It's just like buying a car. You have a down payment and then you have monthly payments after that. But other than that and a deposit on the warehouse, there's not a lot of opening costs. You're not buying a ton of inventory. You're not, spending thousands to build out a space. It's a relatively low cost of entry. And oftentimes people have either tried the chuck in a truck road and said, maybe if I go with this more professional one, they'll help me get leads and help me do all these other business oriented things that might not be, my strength. It's the one thing about franchising, when you think about this as a choice, rarely are you going to find the unicorn where you have a business owner who is a great business, has high business acumen, has amazing marketing skills, has great hiring skills. It's a unicorn. You're never going to find that one person who is excellent in every one of those. But typically the franchise owners that come to us excel in at least one, if not two of those areas, and are happy to find, hey, these guys have really worked out the kinks of the other part. And they're always looking to grow and always looking for feedback on how the system and the process can get better. And
then I'm sure the franchisee can lean on you for support, lean on the consultant to help it smooth off their areas that they're not as good as well as just hire employees.
Absolutely.
As they get to 4 or 5 trucks and having, whether they're not as good at sales or not as good at operations, hiring a manager to cover their weak spots.
Yeah. And I believe that's true anywhere in life, whether you work in the corporate world and surround yourself with, smart and strong people who complement you, or, as a franchise owner. And who knows, even, you think about marriage, yin and yang, opposites attract, because they support each other and complement each other well.
And how about on the resale side? Are there any Junk King resales available?
So there's always, some percentage of the system that either for, unfortunately, like a healthcare concern or something like that, there are resales. But otherwise, we're a brand now that's coming up on 12 years old. So there are people that are saying, okay, I'm ready to retire and move on.
There's people moving Florida to California.
Yes, just
California
like me,
to
Florida to California. So at any time, you'll see in a healthy system, anywhere from 5 to 7% of the units are for sale as far as a transfer goes. And we fit right in that mold. So you look at our 175 units and, we're going to have 8 or 10 that are transitioning at any given time.
And I can imagine they traded a pretty nice premium above the 80 to 100 or so K to start the business.
Sure. Yeah. Because you would have kind of the value of the population. So there is an asset there that, when you look at valuation of our business, The trucks, depending on if you have them paid off or not, can be an asset. Otherwise, you're just taking over their loan payments. And then really, again, you're looking at goodwill. How big, what's the revenue, and how do we put a percentage on goodwill?
And I can imagine if the franchise owner is making like $100K, you might be able to buy it for $300K up to $400K, depending on the local market and who the buyer is going to be.
Sure. Typically, we fall right in the matrix, or right in the metric of like a 3 to 4 multiple of profitability or EBITDA, just like you would see in almost any other service brand. But even for those franchise owners, if unfortunately they're underperforming and they're looking to transition, there is still some asset value in the population, trucks, and goodwill. So even if they're not the best at running a great, highly profitable business, they can still transition out at a very, very reasonable, what they would consider a win.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And compared to other businesses like in the food space, where you have to really look hard if you're going to ever recoup your investment back. Because if you're investing not $100K to get going, but $300-400K, and like Subway, it's the resales are usually $200, $250, and at the midpoint investment's $350.
Right.
So you're
and
going to spend all
there's
this
a lot
time
of
building
inventory. There's a lot of perishables. There's so many factors between quick serve restaurants and service, whether it's been tutoring or cleaning or now junk hauling. I've always stayed in that service industry, and have found great success in it. And my success only comes through our franchise owners. So, that's a good thing about each one of the businesses and industries that I've been in, is as long as we have successful franchise owners, then the franchisor is doing well as well.
Well, Lisa, any concluding thoughts for prospective franchisees?
When you think about Junk King as a franchise, another real strength of our founder, Mike Andriacchi, being in the Bay Area is really that technology side. So a few of the things that we look at as the next 5 to 7 years and what's going to really drive our growth. One is making sure that we stay up to date on technology, both from a marketing standpoint, as well as their scheduling and logistical software, because that does, play a key factor in making them profitable. And then the next piece, Patrick, really is how do we continue to expand business lines in the junk hauling industry? So we have big red dump trucks and we can come and do full service for you. But at Junk King, you can also rent a dumpster for 3 days. And our dumpsters are 12 yards. So they fit very nicely in a driveway. They're made for the consumer. They're not made for big construction jobs or anything along those lines. So it's another revenue line for our franchise owners. And we just recently, within the last 3 weeks, launched what's called a dumpster bag. So it's a 3-yard bag that you can fill it up in your garage. You can fill it up in the backyard.
Whatever the hell you want to put in it.
Yep. Leave it on the curbside and we'll swing by and pick it up. So just constantly looking for those opportunities so that our growth isn't just determined by adding big red trucks, but also by adding additional services for our franchise owners.
Yeah. And I imagine there's just a lot of ways to upsell once you have that customer in the door.
Yep. Or downsell if you want to say, instead of doing full service hauling, here, have 2 bags so that you can also do it at your own convenience. And, kind of works both ways. But it's an exciting industry. And like I said to you before we started recording, like, I don't know that 5 years ago, I would have ever said to anyone in my life, I'm going to go be a junk hauler. And it's been an interesting industry. It's been amazingly rewarding. And, the amount of philanthropic opportunities that we've had working with big organizations, and certainly ones that are near and dear to a lot of our franchise owners' hearts, gives them that get up and go every morning to say, let's go see what we're going to find. Let's see what we can keep out of the landfills and save the planet one truck at a time.
I love it. Lisa, if anyone's interested in potentially being a Junk King franchisee, what's the best way to get in contact?
Sure. You can go to our website at www.junk-king.com, or you can simply call in 888-888-JUNK.
Perfect. That's easy. Well, Lisa, thanks again. I really appreciate opening up about your experience in franchising, junk space, all different types of service businesses, your career trajectory, and how Junk King's differentiated. And for anyone that's listening, if you're further interested, give them a call or visit their website.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I've had a great time.
Thanks, Lisa.